Good morning once again. I think I have prepared my first topic, French Revolution and the making of nationalism. Today I'm here with the second topic, the making of nationalism in Europe. Let us have a revision, first of all, what we have learned in the first one. What was that? We have seen that revolutionaries in France took some steps. They adopted some steps to bring the idea of a nation. All those steps we have seen already, and a lot of changes happened in France. Napoleon came into power. He also introduced a lot of steps, which is popularly known as the civil code, and we have seen the reaction of the people towards it. Before we move to the next topic, to the second topic, I'm ready with some assignments from the first topic. As you can see on the board, there are some questions given for you. You have to answer. I'm very sure that you will answer for all these questions. So let us have a look on that. What are the questions given from the first topic? If you don't know any answer, you can once more go back to the first video. Then you can have the answers for those questions. The first question is here. Explain Frederick Sorio's vision in his painting, Democratic and Social Republics. You can write the answer, I'm very sure. So let us move on to the second question. The second one is describe the steps taken by the French revolutionaries to create a sense of collective identity among the people. There are some steps which were taken by the French revolutionaries that you have to write. Third one, you have to write the features of the Napoleonic Code. What were the features of administrative changes which were brought about by Napoleon? And the next one, describe the reactions of the local population to the French rule. So all these four questions are very clear to you all. I'm very sure once more that you can write the answers for all those questions. Now we are moving to the second part of the chapter. That is as you can see on the board once again, the second topic is making of nationalism in Europe. When we move ahead, we are going to see that we are now in the previous topic we have seen only how nationalism has been spread in France. France is not the only one country in Europe. There are many other nations. Now we will see how it was spread all over the Europe. Before that, we have to see the different topics which will be discussed. As you can see on the board, there are different topics we have to discuss about in the second heading. What are they? First one is political and cultural fragmentation. I'll go to the deep study, deep discussion afterwards. Then aristocracy and the middle class, liberal nationalism, conservatism after 1815, then revolutionaries. These are the 5 headings under which we will have to study. We will have to see how nationalism was spread in different parts of Europe. So I think we can move to the first one, that is political and cultural fragmentation. Political and cultural fragmentation in Europe. What we have to see, what is fragmentation? Fragmentation means division. Politically and culturally, people were divided. They were divided into different groups. The first one is, as you can see, political and cultural fragmentation in Europe. What is political and cultural fragmentation? Fragmentation means division. There was no unity among the people. Today we can see there are many countries, America or Canada. They are the countries of America, the continent of America. If we come to Asia, we can see India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, or Pakistan. These are Asian countries. If you go to Europe, you can see France or Germany or Italy, Switzerland. In this way, there are many countries. But this is not the country. These were not the countries till the beginning of the 18th century, or we can say till the middle of the 18th century. That was not the condition. You can see that major parts of the Europe were divided into smaller or bigger kingdoms, and these kingdoms were headed by autocratic rulers. There were monarchs in these kingdoms, as we have seen in France. Louis XVI was the ruler of France when the French Revolution occurred. These types of monarchs were there in different parts or different kingdoms of Europe. There were very small kingdoms or bigger units also. And this is what fragmentation. Now you can see the next feature. What is that? People though of those territories, they did not have any collective identity. Collective identity in the sense a feeling of unity or oneness, a uniqueness. That could not be found there. They divided themselves on the basis of their culture. And when we talk about the culture, language is an important part. They did not have any common language also. Their language also was different even in the same kingdom. People speak different languages. Even today we can see in our country, or if we go to any of the countries of the world, in major parts of the world, we can see that people speak within the same country, people speak different languages. The situation was much worse than this time, in those times when we are talking about, that is what, middle of the 18th century. Then what is the next feature? That is, the example has been given on the board. What is the example given? Habsburg Empire. Habsburg is an empire. You have heard about Ottoman Empire. You have heard about different empires in the different parts of Europe or in other continents. One such empire is Habsburg Empire. That empire ruled over Spain and Austria. That Habsburg Empire was considered as a patchwork. What do you mean by patchwork? Patchwork means an area or something, a surface which has been formed with the help of bigger or smaller units, and they have been completely different from one another. That is what patchwork. You might have seen it in the clothes also. This patchwork is very common in the cushions for the sofa, or there we can see that some pictures or some cloth, a part of cloth has been attached on a wider part, so that will not look similar. That is what a patchwork. The Austrian Habsburg Empire, that was a patchwork of different peoples and different territories. The example is very clearly explained here on the screen. You can see it, that it comprised of different people from different territories. People of different territories included in the same region. Their language was different, their way of living was different, their culture was different. They did not have any commonality. There was only one thing which made them common, or which binded them together, and what was that? All of them came under the same ruler, or say they belonged to the same empire. That was the only one commonality which we could see. That is why I told you that that was a patchwork of different territories. What was the next feature? I told you that there was only one commonness among them, and that is what? A common empire. Or they were ruled by the same ruler. I think that topic is clear to you all. When we discuss about the society, the social situation, the fragmentation politically and culturally, the society was fragmented, the kingdom was fragmented, or the empire was fragmented, that you have already seen. Now when we talk about the society, we are going to see the social structure now. What was the social structure? Particularly, as you can see here, particularly there were two classes. Who were they? Aristocracy and the middle class. We are going to discuss about them now. Who was or what is aristocracy? What is aristocracy? It is a group of people who were very small in number and who was the dominant class. Dominant class means the most important or influential class in the society. As we have seen the first and the second estate in France. In the same way, this is what aristocracy, the upper class people who had enjoyed all the privileges, though they were very small in number. They were very small in number, but they enjoyed all the privileges. And this aristocracy had a common way of life. They binded with each other. Wherever they lived, they had a common way, their living style that was common. They were the people who owned estates in the countryside, in the villages. Almost all the estates were owned by them. And when we talk about the cities and towns, They were the people who owned the houses. Almost all the buildings in the houses and the estates in the villages were owned by the aristocracy. And one thing was also very, very clearly visible. What was that? They were the people who, almost all of them, they spoke French. That was the language which united them. We are talking about the aristocracy. Don't forget it. And they made themselves stronger by the connection or the ties of marriage relations. They made themselves, I told you that they were small in number, but they were dominant class. How they became dominant, that is from the very earlier stages. In class 9 you have already learned what was the structure of Europe from the very beginning of the society. When they started living as a society, from that time onwards they had followed that criteria. Thus they became important in the society. This is what the feature of aristocratic group. Now we are moving to the next category of people. Who are they? Next category is the poor peasants. Second category of people is poor peasants. Peasantry. This peasantry formed major group of population. They were large in number. We have seen that aristocracy was very less in number, but they were the dominant class. This group, peasantry, they were in number, they were large, but they did not have any rights. They did not enjoy any rights. We had seen in French Revolution the third estate. Third estate were the group, that was the group who had to take all the burden of taxes, and the one who did not have any privilege. The first group, first and second estate, just now I told you about that, name has been given to them, that is aristocracy. They were the people who enjoyed all the privileges, and that is also by birth. Peasantry, the second group, they were very large in number. They were tenants and small owners of they owned small pieces of land and they cultivated by themselves. And that is also difference is there. In the western part, this land holdings were small, and these small land holdings were cultivated by either the landowner or by the tenant. In the French Revolution, you have learned this term is not new for you. Tenant is a term which has been there in class 9th. Then when we talk about the eastern part, Eastern Europe, vast estates were there and they were cultivated by serfs. Don't forget a term you have learned in class 9th. What is that? Feudalism. I think all of you are very clear about feudalism. In that system, the real owner of the land did not cultivate the land. What did he do? He divided his land into different people. Among different people, the land was divided, and finally, there were different landowners for the same piece of land. And finally, the serfs cultivated the land. That serfdom, that was a part of feudalism. And serfs cultivated most part of the land in the east. Now we are moving to the third category of people, that was the middle class, the newly emerged class in the society of Europe. What was middle class? In the previous time, till the middle of the 18th century, there were only two kinds of people, the aristocracy and the peasantry. Now, after a lot of changes in Europe, particularly in England, you have learned about different developments in England. The people of England, they are considered, and they were in the past also, they were considered as one of the strongest people of the world. And one of intelligence, they were intelligent also. And that is why they used their power, their strength, and their ability to exploit different parts of the world. And they only were the people who introduced the production of goods in the machineries. Industrialization, not a new term for you. Industrialization was introduced in Europe, and in which country? That was in England. And as a result of this industrialization, a new class of people emerged. They came into being. And what was that group? That is known as middle class. What were the features of middle class? They emerged due to industrialization, I told you. Then they included, who were the people included in the middle class? Industrialists, businessmen, and professionals. And why this group is important? Why should we discuss about this middle class now? It is because almost all the changes all over the world, not only in Europe, when we come to India also we can see the same. All the changes in the world have been introduced by this group of people, which is that group, middle class. Middle class introduced all the changes all over the world. They were the people who were learned, who were intelligent, who had a critical way of thinking. Learned about different philosophers last year: Rousseau, Karl Marx, Montesquieu. You cannot forget these names and their ideas. All these critical thinkers, these philosophers came from the middle class. They were the people who wanted to bring some changes. You in Russia last year you have learned about liberals, conservatives, liberals, and radicals. I think you did not forget it. There also we could see the presence of the middle class. Middle class brought about a lot of changes which made or which changed the history of particularly Europe, not only Europe, I told you almost all the parts of the world. You have not got bored now? Shall we move on to the next heading? Next heading is liberalism. What is liberalism? It was a factor during the changes which were brought in Europe. Liberalism, that word has been adopted from a Latin word, means liber. That word is Latin word is liber, which means making free. Liberalism is a word stood for particularly the middle class. I told you that the middle class were the ones who brought a lot of changes in France and in Europe. And liberalism, that also was a word introduced by the middle class, which meant very clearly freedom. And what type of freedom they needed? Liberalism stood in different aspects. First of all, as you can see on the screen, that is what political liberalism. Politically, what was liberalism? What was political liberalism? Let us have a look on the screen just now. What is political liberalism? Politically, liberalism means government by consent. Government by consent of the people means people should agree to form the government, or very simply, government should be elected by the people, or people's representatives should form the government. The next one is equality before law. During the French Revolution also, that equality, that was an important component, an important aspect during the French Revolution. Equality. People should be treated equal in front of the law. The next one is freedom of individual. Freedoms, I told you liberalism means freedom. People should be made free from all the burden. The unnecessary burden should not be there on the shoulders of the people. That is what liberalism for the middle class. And end of autocracy and privileges. What is autocracy? Autocracy means, we have in the first topic we have seen absolutist monarchy. What is absolute monarchy? That is what autocracy. Autocracy means the ruler himself take all the decisions. He never looks for, or he never consult anybody. He never cares for anybody. If he wish, he'll do. Otherwise, he will not do. If he feels that that is better, then he will do. He will not listen to anybody. That is what autocracy. End of autocracy and privileges. Just now only I told you what is privilege. The privileges, some privileges were given to some sections of the people by birth. When we talk about our country, we had a system, Varna system. You might have heard it. What was Varna system? Hindus were divided into 4 castes. That is very commonly known as caste system today. Previously, it was known as Varna system. In class 6th or 7th, you have learned it. People divided into 4 Varnas, which were the Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. And what was the basis of that division? That was on the basis of our birth. In the same way, in Europe also, they did not have any caste system, but they had some hierarchy in the society. Last year, you have learned about the first, second, and third estates. That was also based on their birth. In the same way, here the people, the middle class, brought that idea that this autocracy and the privileges by birth should be brought to an end. That was political liberalism for them. Next one, a constitution and a representative government. What is a constitution? Constitution is a set of law which regulates the authorities. They demanded for a constitution. Once more, we have to go back to 1789. What is the importance of that year? French Revolution. In French Revolution, we saw that France became a constitutional monarchy. You might be remembering that. France became a constitutional monarchy means the Jacobin Club, the revolutionaries, they framed a constitution, National Assembly of France, you might be remembering. They framed a constitution and now the monarch had to rule the country according to the constitution. That is what a constitution and a representative government. What do you mean by representative government? In the very first point it has been written. What is that? Government by consent. Government by consent or a representative government means people will select their representatives and there from among those representatives there would be one or a group of people who would be elected as the ruler. That is what a representative form of government. Now all these are the points which talk about the political liberalism. I think it's very clear to you all. Liberalism means freedom. Politically, these were the points which stood for liberalism. Politically, people wanted to be free. Now, let us move ahead. Now, we are moving to economic nationalism. Economic nationalism, don't be confused. Economic nationalism, here we are talking about economic liberalism. Nationalism was brought about by different steps or different stages by different kinds of people. One is liberalism. Here, economic nationalism. Here I have given that heading only because nationalism to be created through liberalism. Economic liberalism has been interpreted as economic nationalism. Okay, what was economic freedom or what was economic nationalism for very common people? Very simple. I told you that people were not free politically and economically, they were not free. What were the restrictions upon them? Here, from these points, you can understand what were the restrictions. For that, the point has been explained in such a way that what did they demand or what did they need for that? What did they need? Number one, freedom of markets. Freedom of markets. Here only the point has been very clear. Why? What is that? The markets were not free. Markets were not free means the ruler had a very clear control upon the market. The traders, the businessmen were not able to do the marketing or their business very smoothly. They needed freedom of market and they needed abolition of state imposed restrictions on the movement of goods and capital. What has been written? Abolition, elimination, abolition of state imposed restrictions. What do you mean by state imposed restrictions? Government had imposed some restrictions or some control in your the remaining chapters, in particular in economics. You are going to see restrictions by the government. There is a chapter in your economics book, restrictions which have been imposed by different governments according to the system of economics of that particular country. In previous time also, the government had imposed some restrictions and those restrictions had to be abolished. That was what economic nationalism for the people. I told you that this economic nationalism, that idea, that was very new for the common people, the peasantry, the poor ones, the illiterate ones, they did not know it. Then who spread it? That was middle class. Middle class spread this idea of economic and political liberalism. This economic liberalism is not over. It had one more aspect. It was that I told you freedom of market. What was freedom of market? Everywhere, almost all the area. Now let us take an example of UP. Western UP, when a person he travels from Western UP to the eastern part of UP, he might be able to meet with many people who speak different dialects. It varies from Hindi to Urdu or Arabi or Bhojpuri or Awadhi or I don't know what are the other languages which have been spoken. There are a lot of languages and some words also have been adopted from different languages and the way of talking is different. It is very common in the same state that difference is common. And the way of celebrating the festivals, that may be also different from in the same state. It's a large state. It is a wide state, vast area it has, and has a large number of people also from a different part, from the western part to the middle part to the eastern part of UP. This difference is very common. In the same way, but here we cannot see. Suppose I am bringing 1 meter cloth from the western part of UP to the eastern part. It will be same measurement, no? If I am bringing 1 meter cloth from Kanpur to Gorakhpur, for example, or Faizabad to Gorakhpur, in Faizabad and in Gorakhpur also, the length, the measurement of that cloth will be 1 meter only. There will not be any change. Or if I bring 1 kilo of apple or grapes from anywhere in UP or anywhere in India to any part of India, that weight or that measurement that remains the same. But that was not the situation the previous time in India and in abroad also. In European countries, it was very common that if a person took 1 kilo of sugar from one part of France to the other part, that may be more than 1 kilo or less than 1 kilo. That was a system of weights and measurements they followed. There was no similarity, there was no uniqueness, there was no commonality in the system of weights and measures. Then nothing to talk about currency. Currency also, there were very large in number. In France only, there were more than 30 varieties of currencies which were prevailed. So it was very difficult for a person who traveled in different parts of France. We are talking about only one country. Then nothing to tell about the different other countries. If a person today, if a person has to travel in different European countries, will he face any problem? I know that your answer will be no. Why he will not face a problem? Because now there is a common currency. What is that? Euro. A person, we can, if an Indian, if I or you go to the visit the European countries, then you will not face any problem. We can have our money, Indian rupee, Indian currency exchanged with euro, and you can visit all the European countries. You will not face any problem. You don't have to exchange your money there. Common currency has been there. That was implemented to bring that step or to take that step. There has been a lot of changes which had to be brought. We are talking about that change only. This is what economic nationalism. I think the idea is clear to you. When we talk about economic nationalism, something is there. What is that? The heading you might not have heard. What is the heading? Zollverein. What is Zollverein? It was a customs union written on the first line. Zollverein was a customs union established or formed by Prussia, a small kingdom. Now, that Prussia has become a country which is at Germany. I'll teach you in the same chapter how Prussia changed into Germany. Prussia took the initiative in the year 1834, and a customs union was introduced. That customs union is known as Zollverein. And what was it, or what was its feature? It abolished all the tariff barriers. Tariff barrier in the sense, when we go from one part, when we cross the boundary of one kingdom to the other, then we had to give tariff. Now, if we are crossing, suppose you are taking the marble from Rajasthan to Kerala, you might have heard that in between the state borders you have to be undergoing to the checking. There you may have to pay the tax also if you did not pay earlier. So some checking, some restrictions which have been put upon by the state governments, that is for the security. In the same way, there also, from one kingdom to the other kingdom, people had to face a lot of restrictions. And that tariff barrier had been adopted through Zollverein by Prussia in the year 1834. Next important step it included, that was reduce the number of currencies. Just now I told you, no, there were more than 33 currencies prevailed in different parts of Europe, and that number of currencies were reduced. Now it was very easy for the people to move. It was very easy for them to take their goods from one area to the other. And the third one is it created a good network of railways. What is the importance of railways in economic nationalism or economic liberalism? Railways will help the people to move their goods very quickly, very smoothly. So these are the features of Zollverein, a customs union which was established or introduced by Prussia in the year 1834. So you have understood political nationalism and economic nationalism. Shall we move on to the next topic now? You have understood it now? Liberalism, economic liberalism and political liberalism. So it's a time to go for the next heading. What is the next heading? It is conservatism after 1815. What is the importance of the year 1815? Do you know? You have done in the previous class. What was that? Your first chapter of class 9th history came to an end with the year 1815. What is the importance of the year 1815? Napoleon was defeated at the Battle of Waterloo. That is what the importance of the year 1815, Battle of Waterloo and the defeat of Napoleon. When Napoleon was defeated, all the conservatives grouped together. They came together. Why? They were very much worried about the growth of nationalism all over the world. Napoleon had conquered France. He introduced Napoleonic Code in France. And he was a greedy Napoleon Bonaparte. You have heard about him. He was very greedy. He wanted to be called as a master of the whole world. So what did he do? He spread his administrative reforms in different parts of Europe. He sent his army there. We have completed in the first topic. And this growth, and people wholeheartedly welcomed his ideas because it was a change. Whenever something is new, people very quickly adopt them. And these conservatives, the autocratic monarchs, they were very much worried about the growth of nationalism among the people because if nationalism is spread, if the ideas of liberty, equality, freedom or democracy, if these ideas have been spread among the people, then these autocratic rulers will not have any role in the society. They had a fear. So what did they do? They had some ideas in their minds. They did not want any change. Conservatives, Russian Revolution, you have learned it. Conservatives were those people who did not want any change. So what did they do? They had some ideas among the ideas in their minds. What were they? Preservation of traditional institutions of state and society. Preservation of the traditional institutions. What was the traditional institution? The ruler with the autonomous power, the subjects, they would be obeying the ruler very blindly. They would not question the ruler. They would not criticize the ruler. Whatever the ruler does, the people had to be very happy or satisfied. That is what the traditional institution of state and society. And what was the traditional institution of society? The hierarchy, social hierarchy from high level to the low level. Some people enjoyed all the benefits and privileges. Some they did not face any problem. They did not enjoy anything, but they did not have any problem even. And the third one, the lowest section of the society had the burden of all the problems. The very poor people, and who were very large in number. So that is what the traditional situation of the society. These conservatives wanted to preserve all these traditional institutions of the society. Then what did they want? They want return to the society of the pre-revolutionary days. Pre-revolutionary. Pre means before. Pre-revolutionary days means whatever the system was there, in whatever way the society was running, to that field or to that style, they wanted to go back. Very clearly, they wanted to abolish all the modernity or modernization or the changes which were brought about by Napoleon, going back to the previous time. The last one, the third one is strengthening of autocratic monarchies. That is a summing up of the first and second. In the first and second point, what did I tell you? The importance is given to the autocrat. The importance is given to the monarch. In the first one, we have seen that tradition, the preservation of traditional society and institution. Next one, we have seen the going back to the pre-revolutionary days. That is how they wanted to strengthen themselves. Their position had to be maintained very strong so that there would not be anyone to question them. Like Napoleon, no one would come in the society, or no one would come in front of, no one would be dare to question them or to criticize them. That was what they wanted. I think very clear to you all, conservatism after 1815. These were the features of conservatives. Conservatives were the people who did not want to bring any change. Clear now? So, time to go to the next topic now. Treaty of Vienna. Completely new topic for you. That year is common, 1815. What was the importance of 1815? Napoleon's defeat. Battle of Waterloo. Combined forces. Four combined forces of autocratic rulers defeated Napoleon in the Battle of Waterloo in the year 1815. Napoleon was defeated. Conservatives took rebirth. Till that time, till Napoleon was there, from the time of 1789, 1789. The importance of the year is French Revolution. From the year 1789 to the year 1815, a lot of changes took place in France, not only in France, but in the adjoining states also, adjoining territories also. A very important statement has been given by Austrian Chancellor Duke Metternich. Duke Metternich was the Austrian Chancellor. A remark has been put forward by him. What was the remark? He once remarked that when France sneezes, other parts of the Europe catches cold. It is a very, very, very common saying today. When France sneezes, the other parts of the Europe catches cold. What does it mean? Catching cold is the first stage, then sneezing is the second or the third or the fourth stage. What did Metternich mean by so? Metternich meant that France, all the developments or all the modernization, the process start in Europe. In the European nations, it starts, the center is, or the focus is France. First, everything happens in France, then it is spread to the other parts. He had made the context from the French Revolution. Till that time, no revolutions were there conducted all over the world. No people was there, no one was there to question the autocrat. People thought that even the third estate people who were very poor, who did not have any right, they were not having any freedom. Last year you might have heard that the society framed some laws, sumptuary laws they were known as. What were the sumptuary laws? What they had to wear, the upper class and the lower class or the middle class, what they had to wear, what they had to eat or drink, or what games they wanted to play, in what area they had to live, everything was decided by some laws. Some laws very clearly tell that velvet is a type of cloth you might have seen. Velvet can be used only by the aristocracy. It cannot be used by the poor class, the poor peasantry or the third estate. That is what sumptuary law. There were some games in which the aristocracy could play, but poor people could not play. This law restricted, these types of laws restricted the comforts of the life of the people of the third estate or the poor peasantry or the poor class, the lowest class of the society. These many burdens were there, not only the burden of the tax. Many types of burdens were there on the shoulders of the people of the the lowest class. Okay, the aristocracy and the autocratic rulers, the conservatives, they wanted to go back to that time only. They did not want to give any rights or any privilege to these common people. They considered that Louis XVI, you have heard last year, Louis XVI considered himself as the representative of the God. God has sent among all these people, I'm the only one who has been selected to be the king. So he is the clear representative of the God. That was his vision. So that was his ideology. On that basis, almost all the autocrats ruled the people. So what did these people do in the year 1815? That after the defeat of Napoleon, they assembled at a place in Austria. That place is Vienna. In Vienna, they assembled together and they drew some important points. It was just a meeting. Simply, it was a meeting conducted by the important monarchs of that time. They sat together and they discussed about something, the developments of that time, and they drew some decisions also. That decision, which were all those decisions which were taken by these conservatives in the year 1815 in Vienna, that is known as the Treaty of Vienna. That point is clear to you now. Now let us see what are the points they drawn. Some points were introduced or decided in the meeting of Vienna. That meeting is known as Vienna Congress. In the Vienna Congress in the year 1815, it was done in the chancellorship or in the leadership of the Austrian Chancellor Duke Metternich. He was the head of this meeting, this Congress, Vienna Congress, and the decisions of the Vienna Congress. Number one, Bourbon dynasty was brought back to power in France. Now, who was in power? Bourbon dynasty. Then directory. A lot of changes happened. Finally, Napoleon came. Now going back to the pre-revolutionary age. Who was that? Bourbon dynasty would be brought back to power in France. That was the first decision or that was the first important point of the Treaty of Vienna. Then the second one, France lost the annexed territories. What is annexed territories? Conquered territory. France, under the leadership of Napoleon, had conquered a lot of territories and it expanded its territory. Its kingdom was expanded. Napoleon expanded his kingdom and all those expanded territories were lost by France. France cannot occupy those territories. It would be given back to their rulers. And what was the third one? A series of powerful states were set up at the boundaries of France so that they can avoid a future expansion by France. A series of powerful states were set up in all the boundaries of France. Powerful states were set up so that France would not attack the others and France would not enlarge its territory. And what were they? What were those powerful states? As you can see, Netherlands along with Belgium. Belgium was added to Netherlands and Netherlands was set up in the northern part of France. Then Piedmont along with Geneva in the south. In the southern part of France, Geneva added to Piedmont and Piedmont was established in the southern part. Then Prussia along with Saxony in the northeast. In the northeast, Prussia was set up and Prussia was given a part of Saxony and Russia was given a part of Poland in the northeast. In the northeastern part, Russia was given the land and that was Poland. These small kingdoms were merged with a bigger and stronger kingdom and they were set up in all the boundaries of France so that France would not conquer them. France would not annex them in the future. This is what Treaty of Vienna. Clear, you know? Very clear to you all. There is no doubt. What we have learned? We have learned about the conservatism which was brought by the conservative monarchs after the defeat of Napoleon in the year 1815. We are going to the last heading of the topic and that is the revolutionaries. Revolutionaries. A lot of changes. We are talking about the making of nationalism in Europe. The last heading in the way of making nationalism in Europe, in different parts of Europe, focusing upon France. The last heading is revolutionaries. Who are the revolutionaries? We have seen one of the biggest revolutionaries in our country. That name never goes from our mind. Who is that? Bhagat Singh. He was one of the biggest revolutionaries the world has seen. Okay, so there were a large number of revolutionaries in different parts of the world. We are going to learn about the revolutionaries who worked in Europe after 1815. After 1815, what happened? Starting with the defeat of Napoleon, then conservatism. Conservatism was strongly supported by the Treaty of Vienna. The Vienna Congress was held in 1815 under the chancellorship of Austrian Chancellor Duke Metternich, and they had decided some points, they drew some final decisions, and those final decisions are known as the Treaty of Vienna. Just now we completed it. As a result, as a response to the Treaty of Vienna, what did the people do? All the people were not satisfied because the people had tasted once the freedom. What is freedom? What is equality? What is right? That has been enjoyed by the people once for a short period of time. Napoleon had provided everything to the people. So once they got that taste of freedom, liberalism, now they did not want to go back to the pre-revolutionary days. So what did they do? Now they are not able to criticize. Censorship, an important term which was there in class 9th. What was censorship? Censorship means people were not allowed to criticize the ruler. So it was imposed once more. So it led to the origin of different revolutionaries. Let us see the revolutionary activities after 1815. What were they? The formation of secret societies to oppose the monarchy. The people wanted to oppose the monarchy. So that what did they do? They formed some secret societies. They could not do it openly. They could not work openly because they would be captured. They would be arrested. Censorship was imposed. So they could not act publicly. So they formed secret societies. Then they had to fight for liberty. What is liberty? Freedom. They wanted to fight for liberty and they wanted freedom and to create nation state. What is nation state? I told you in the first topic. Nation state is a vast area where the rulers and people or they have the same feeling towards the development of the nation or progress of the nation. That creation of the nation state, when I started this topic, I told you that European countries were not these types of France or Germany or Italy or Switzerland or Britain. These countries were not existed till the middle of the 18th century. 18th century means the century which starts with 1789. French Revolution was held in which century? 18th century. So by that time, countries did not exist. There were small kingdoms. So these people, these revolutionaries had some ideology in their mind. Why did they form these secret societies? They formed the secret societies to oppose the monarchy, to fight for liberty and freedom, and to create nation states. And let us see what else they did. They formed, I told you now, they formed the secret societies. Best example is in front of you now. What is example given? Young Italy and Young Europe. They were the two secret societies which were established during this time. The period or the years which followed 1815. From that period onwards, different secret societies were formed. Best two examples have been there, that is Young Italy and Young Europe. Who established them? That was Giuseppe Mazzini. Giuseppe Mazzini, name is completely new for you. I'll introduce that person, Giuseppe Mazzini. Who was he? Let us see. Giuseppe Mazzini, he was a person who born in Geneva in the year 1807. Mazzini, born in Geneva in the year 1807. He became a member of a secret society. Secret societies, the societies which were formed to act against the monarch, the autocratic ruler. He joined one of the secret societies. Then he was sent to exile for attempting a revolution in Liguria. He was sent in exile. What is exile? To send somebody to any other country because of any political reason. When the authorities send a person for political reason, then that is known as exile. Giuseppe Mazzini was sent in exile because he was trialed for trying a revolution in Liguria. Okay, and not over now. Later he founded two underground societies. Underground societies means secret societies. He formed two secret societies, which were the Young Italy and Young Europe. He was the founder of two secret societies, Young Italy and Young Europe, and he tried to unite Italy. Young Italy, that was a secret society he formed to unite Italy. We know these days Italy is very common because of coronavirus and all. That Italy, that's a small country, and that was not a country in that time when we are talking about. We are talking about the middle of the 18th century. By that time, Italy was not a country, Italy was not a nation, it was not a nation state. It was divided. I'll teach you in the next topics, next headings. It was fragmented politically and culturally. It was fragmented. Okay, so Young Italy was formed by Giuseppe Mazzini with the aim. What was his aim? He aimed to unite Italy. He had formed many people. He trained many people for that. And Austrian Chancellor Duke Metternich, just now I took his name. What is his importance? He was the head of the Vienna Congress. He was the Chancellor of Austria, and he headed the Vienna Congress. He was the head of all the conservatives of that time, and Duke Metternich described him as the most dangerous enemy of our social order. The most dangerous enemy of our social order. Why? Why he has been remarked by Metternich in this way? Most dangerous. That word itself tells you the meaning. The most dangerous enemy of our social order means these conservatives did not want to see him at all. These conservatives wanted to eliminate him. Why? Because Mazzini worked or acted against the policies of the autocratic rulers. He did not like the policies of the autocratic rulers, and he wanted to bring some changes, creation of a nation state, bringing liberty, bringing freedom, fight against the monarchical rule. That is why he has been remarked as the most dangerous enemy of our social order. Who remarked it? Duke Metternich. Who was he? He was the Austrian Chancellor. Clear now? No doubt. What is the second topic? Second topic is making of nationalism in Europe. We had completed different headings under this topic. We have seen the political and the cultural fragmentation. We have learned about the aristocracy and the middle class. We have learned about the liberalism, economic and political liberalism. Then we have seen conservatism in after 1815, after the defeat of Napoleon, and finally we have seen the revolutionaries. After 1815, the formation of revolutionary societies we have seen. Second topic is completed. I think there is no doubt remaining. So shall I give you some questions now? Write down your questions. I'm sure that you will write these questions also in your copy. Make it fair. Watch the video again and again if you did not get any answer. Or you can talk to me personally. Your first question is here, and that is, describe the social conditions of Europe in the mid-18th century. What you have to write? The social conditions of Europe. What is that? Aristocracy, peasantry, and the middle class. You can write now. Second question. Highlight the ideology of liberalism. What did liberalism mean? It means freedom. Liber is a Latin word which means free. Liberalism means freedom. You have to write about economic liberalism and political liberalism. Explain them very well. Then the third question is, write a short note on Zollverein. What is Zollverein? Customs union formed by the initiative of Prussia in the year 1834. Then write down its features also. Question number 4. Explain the provisions of the Treaty of Vienna. Vienna Treaty 1815. I told you there are 3 important provisions. Which are they? France lost all the territories which were annexed by Napoleon. Bourbon dynasty had brought back to the power. Then finally, what was that? Some powerful territories were established at the boundaries of France, so that France would not annex them or conquer them in the future, and what you have to write the names of the powerful states also. So that is what the Treaty of Vienna. Question number 5. How did the liberals and the revolutionaries work during the years following 1815? Just now I taught you, know. Revolutionaries and the liberals, what did they do? They went underground, they formed secret societies. In that way, you have to write, and you have to write about Mazzini also. So shall we stop it now? Do well. If any doubt is there, you can clear it to me. So till then, bye. We will meet tomorrow.